Ever catch yourself like debating philosophy with your smart speaker?
No, just me.
Well, get ready because today's deep dive throws us headfirst into a world where ethics and algorithms collide. We're digging into algorithmics, how to like bake morality into AI.
Mm.
And trust me, the source material you sent is mind-blowing. We're talking about a paper, algoretica.pdf, which lays out, wait for it, mathematical formulas for ethical frameworks.
It really is a fascinating concept. It's
Yeah.
pushing the boundaries of what we often consider inherently human.
Exactly. And the brain behind it is Fabio Di Bello, a researcher at the Center for Advanced Studies and Technologies at the University of Chieti in Italy.
Hmm.
And he isn't just theorizing here, he's crafting equations for ethics. I
Yeah.
mean, how wild is that?
What's captivating about De Bello's approach is that he's tackling the million-dollar question. Can we truly quantify something as complex, as nuanced as ethics?
Okay, so let's unpack this equation. What are the core ingredients Di Bello's using to build this ethical framework?
Imagine a recipe, but instead of flour and sugar, we're dealing with concepts like utilitarianism, aiming for the greatest good, for the greatest number. Picture an AI deciding how to distribute resources. A utilitarian approach might prioritize helping most individuals, even if it means some miss out.
Makes sense, but morality isn't always about pleasing the masses, right?
Mm.
Sometimes sticking to your guns, doing what's morally right, regardless of the outcome, feels more important.
Precisely. And Di Bello acknowledges that. His equation also factors in deontology, the idea that upholding moral rules is paramount, even if bending them slightly could yield a better outcome for some.
So it's this constant tension, this ethical tug of war between what benefits the most people and what's considered morally right, even if it's a tougher call.
And just when you thought it couldn't get more layered, Di Bello adds another ingredient to the mix equity. He argues that any ethical framework, especially one governing AI, needs to ensure fairness and justice in the decision-making process. It's about factoring in whether actions are treating everyone fairly regardless of their background or circumstances.
Okay, now that's an element I can get behind AI striving for fairness. It's almost like we're talking about programming a digital conscience. But hold on a second. If we're talking about instilling ethics into AI, wouldn't that mean settling on one universal set of morals? What about individual values and
Plus,
beliefs?
it's a crucial point, and De Bello tackles it head-on. He emphasizes that ethical weights aren't one-size-fits-all. Matters most to you, whether it's sticking to the rules, prioritizing the greater good, or ensuring fairness might differ for someone else, even entire cultures.
So how do we translate that nuance, that beautiful messiness of human values into a mathematical formula? It feels like trying to capture a rainbow in a box.
That's where Di Bello's work gets really intriguing. His equation isn't about dictating a single set of morals. Instead, it's designed to be flexible, accommodating those individual or cultural variations. Think of it like a sophisticated soundboard with different sliders for each ethical principle. You can adjust the levels, fine-tuning the emphasis on utilitarianism, deontology, or equity based on the specific context or even legal frameworks.
Okay, so it's less about a universal moral code and more about a customizable framework. That makes sense. But let's get down to brass tacks. How would this actually play out in the real world? Can you give us a concrete example?
Absolutely. Let's take the classic self-driving car dilemma. Imagine an autonomous vehicle facing a split-second decision: swerve to avoid a pedestrian and risk the passenger's safety, or stay the course and potentially harm the pedestrian. This is where De Bello's formula could come into play.
I'm picturing a supercomputer in the car's dashboard frantically crunching numbers based on this ethical equation as the car speeds down the road.
You're not far off. The AI equipped with this equation would weigh all those ethical factors we've discussed: utilitarianism, deontology, equity, and even risk aversion, which De Bello includes, to avoid reckless decision-making. It would weigh these factors based on its programming, which could be tailored to align with specific ethical guidelines or legal frameworks.
So it's like giving the AI a moral compass, guiding its choices in those high-stakes moments. But are we comfortable handing over that much responsibility to a machine? We're talking about life or death situations here.
It's a weighty responsibility, no doubt. And that's why the development of algorithmics raises so many questions about accountability and oversight. But the potential benefits are hard to ignore.
Okay, play the optimist card for me. Give me some hope here. This is starting to feel like a sci-fi thriller.
Let's stick with healthcare. Imagine AI armed with algorithmics assisting with the allocation of scarce medical resources. It could potentially make those tough decisions about who gets priority access to treatment, ensuring the process is as fair and impartial as possible.
That's a huge one, especially in situations where emotions might cloud human judgment. But what about something like criminal justice? AI is already playing a role there, but it's also raising concerns about bias.
And that's precisely where Di Bello believes algorithmics could be transformative. He argues that AI using this approach could help reduce bias in sentencing, ensuring individuals are treated equally under the law regardless of their race, gender, or socioeconomic status. It's about striving for a more just and equitable system overall.
So we're potentially talking about AI that could make our healthcare systems fairer, our legal systems more just, it sounds almost too good to be true. And I know we always like to approach these grand ideas with a healthy dose of skepticism. So put on your cynic's hat for a second. What are the potential pitfalls? Where could this whole algorithmics thing go wrong?
Yeah, you're right to pump the brakes a bit because algorithmics is still in its infancy. It's like we're trying to map an entire continent with just a compass and like a tattered map.
Precisely. One of the biggest challenges is this: can we truly encapsulate the beautiful, messy tapestry of human ethics into cold, hard formulas?
Right.
We're talking about capturing emotions, intuition, those gut feelings that even we struggle to explain into algorithms.
It's like trying to program a robot to appreciate a symphony. Technically, you could analyze the notes, the tempo, but would it feel the music? Exactly. And then there's this, Di Bello's equation relies on assigning weights to different ethical principles. Who gets to decide those weights? Whose values are we prioritizing? There's a risk, even with the best intentions, of embedding existing biases, cultural preferences, or even political leanings into the very fabric of these systems.
It becomes less about the equation itself and more about the people writing it, the values we're baking into the system from the get-go.
Precisely. And that leads us to the million-dollar question, the one that keeps ethicists up at night: accountability. If an AI guided by these algorithms makes a mistake, who bears the responsibility? The programmer, the user, the AI itself?
It's uncharted territory, like trying to figure out liability law in the Wild West.
Yeah.
A fascinating thought experiment, for sure.
And one we can't ignore. Di Bello's work on algorithmics is groundbreaking, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. As AI becomes more autonomous, these ethical considerations will only become more urgent, more complex.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners today?
It boils down to this. AI is evolving at warp speed. We can't afford to be bystanders in this revolution. Di Bello's work is a call to action, to engage in these discussions now, to grapple with the potential benefits and the very real perils of embedding morality into machines.
It's a brave new world, and as we navigate it, we need to ask ourselves, what role do we want ethics to play in shaping AI's future? That's something for all of us to ponder. Thanks for diving deep with us today.